Hello, Flawless family. In continuation with our Mental Health Month campaign, today I am so fortunate to be here with Sheila Hamilton. Now, Sheila is a 5-time Emmy Award-winning journalist, the author of All the Things We Never Knew, and also a huge mental health advocate. She's also an advisory board member here at the Flawless Foundation and the founder of Beyond Well, which is an inspiring and motivating podcast featuring Sheila and a team of licensed clinical psychologists. So we're just very fortunate to be here today with Sheila Hamilton. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Trey. I'm so happy to be with you. I love talking about this all the time, so this is going to be great.
Dive me into the questions. Question number one, with everything going on with COVID-19, what has been the most challenging aspect of this crisis for you? And has there been any gifts or silver linings?
Yeah, I want to start with the silver lining, first of all. My daughter has a compromised immune system, and so early in March, she said, "Mom, I think I'm going to come home because COVID is going to be really big." And I was kind of not relating to it yet, but I was like, "That's great, really good idea." So she came home on March 4th, and we went into quarantine together, and then her boyfriend arrived on March 9th. And so my family has gotten bigger and really much cooler. I mean, I just love hanging out with young people. They're so positive and they laugh a lot, and the energy and the ideas, and they're both super smart Stanford grads. And so they're thinking about technology that I've never even heard of. And so the addition of having them in my life full time has been really the silver lining. It's been tremendous. And I think the reality for me about the difficulty is that I'm truly concerned about the long tail of this pandemic being a mental health crisis that's almost unimaginable to most people. I think because advocates are so in the trenches, and we're already aware of how poorly mental health is funded and how often organizations are fighting over the rare scraps there are for mental health organizations, and then seeing these oncoming cuts that are coming, I have a lot of anxiety around what's going to happen to our most vulnerable people. I'm really deeply concerned about it.
No, definitely 100%. And, it's been really tough, as you just mentioned, for everyone in their mental health. So in everything that you just mentioned, how are you dealing with that? Like, how have you been taking care of your own mental health during this time?
I try really hard every single day to take about 10 minutes when I wake up, and I either just sit in mindful reflection or I meditate. And I give myself a full hour. If I can go for a full hour, awesome. If I can't, because my mind is just too distracted, I make myself give myself at least 10 to 15 minutes of opportunity to have kind of a brain reset. And then I have coffee and take my dog on a nice walk, and that's when I dive into work. And after 5 or 6 hours of steady work, I usually stretch or read a book or try to give myself another sort of mini mental health break. And then I spend the evening connecting with friends and family, because I think even though we're all tired of Zoom, it's super important to use it for the reasons that sustain us and make us feel really connected again.
And so that's kind of sounds like what your day is like. Would you say that is your daily routine, is going through those steps? Is that how you start every morning, is with the meditation?
I try really hard to, because I'm sensitive, and I get knocked off by reading too much news or watching the news or feeling someone else's crisis. I can become very involved or over-involved in how they're doing. And so keeping a schedule for me has really been helpful in terms of just, okay, check-in time. How are you doing? How's your body? Move your body, drink lots of water, eat nutritious food. It's like health is mental health, right? And so I'm trying to actually be more mindful of it now than I would, although I just ate a half a package of licorice. So I'm not sure I'm doing it all the time well, but sometimes we got to treat ourselves right.
Oh, for sure. Listen, we're all learning how to adjust to global pandemic. So I think it's fine to have a package of licorice every now and often. So, well, I love that. That's amazing. And something else I want to talk about is, you were voted Oregon's best radio personality. So I mentioned the podcast earlier. I really wanted to kind of dive into that and, have you speak about, your podcast and, what do you guys talk about and everything, just background of how it became, such a popular podcast.
Yeah, Trey, I've always felt like information about tools for better living should be easily accessible to everyone, regardless of their income or their race or where they live in the country. And I really was frustrated when I started looking at the studies of how difficult it is to actually get professional care.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're in crisis, there's one psychiatrist. Similarly, with adults, when you're really needing someone to talk to, the hurdles to get through insurance, to actually find someone who takes your plan, to go there in traffic. And so what we wanted to do is provide the same kind of basics that people get if they actually showed up in a counselor's office, in the form of just really great conversations, interviews with people who have lived experience and gotten through it. And it's very positive, it's really light. We have phenomenal guests, and we include a lot of stars and musical artists because they too struggle with mental health challenges. And so young people in particular really like our show, which has been amazing. We're the fastest growing health podcast on Spotify, which is great.
Wow, awesome. I'm gonna,
yeah,
as somebody that
follow
to be, someone that aspires to be a psychologist, I'm definitely gonna put that on my podcast list. So I'd love to hear about that and the work that you're doing. And something else that you've worked on is, you mentioned how you're very passionate about mental health. As your book shows, it has affected your life dearly. So without giving away too much, can you just tell us about, your book, All the Things We Never Knew, and what a reader could expect from this book?
Sure. I lost my late husband to suicide. And one of the things that happened to me was that I realized I was college educated, an investigative journalist. I was, a person who was really interested in a lot of topics, but the onset of my husband's mental illness just went completely over my head. He was denying he was in trouble. I didn't know the signs and symptoms to be looking for, and it ended up in just a disaster. And so what I wanted to do was write a memoir that showed people the kind of confusion that families and people who love people with mental illness go through, because one day your loved one might seem very out of sorts, and the next day they might be okay again. And we had a lot of those ups and downs before my husband was finally actually diagnosed. And I just wanted to give people just a sense of the confusion and chaos that occurs, but also I intersperse all of the chapters with really good resources for families members who are dealing with someone in crisis.
Yeah, and we definitely appreciate you sharing that experience with us. I know that that's definitely something tough to experience and go through, so we appreciate you being vulnerable with us. And kind of what you were mentioning in terms of just like compassion and seeing all those things. So at Flawless, as as being an advisory board member, we believe in seeing the light and the goodness and the perfection in every person. And I think if we do more of that, we can really save more lives. So what do you think it means to see the perfection in every person?
I just think, our differences are the light, our unique capabilities, the way that our brains work are exactly what the definition of flawless is. Every one of us is really born flawless, and the rest of us should be, I think, multicultural enough, empathetic enough to understand that we all have a place in the society. Every life is of value. And I keep thinking about mental health on this spectrum of we're some days doing very well when we have good jobs and roof over our head and people who love us. And then during COVID and times when things get really rough, our own mental health can be impacted. So I very much try to talk about mental health is not an us versus them proposition, but it's all of us. We're all flawless in our own really cool, unique way, and opening up our hearts and minds to that diversity and that special thing that every human brings to this experience on earth, I think is the definition of what it means to be flawless.
And there's two things that you said that, I really want to go more deeper into. Is you mentioned society in earth, so we talk about seeing the flaws in each individuals. So how do we get to this flawless world? Like, what are the steps that we need to take to build that flawless world?
More of you guys, Trey. I mean, no, seriously, I'm really, I've worked in this field now for 12 years. And when I first started writing and reporting about mental health, nobody wanted to speak openly about it. It was still, my friends were like really concerned for me that I'd been open about my husband's suicide. And I said, what I want to do is just let people know that this is a human condition, that every from mental illness at some point in their life, that 1 in 5 of us do. With COVID, it's probably more like 3 in 5. And I honestly believe that young people are just unwilling to deal with the stigma of mental illness. They recognize it as part of the way that they can actually be better workers and better human beings and better citizens if their mental health is intact. And they're so much more willing to accept people along every spectrum of where and how our brains work. And so I just, my entire hope honestly exists with young people, Trey. It really does.
Wow, we definitely appreciate the compliment. And that's just beautiful to hear. So, that's more motivation for us and our Flawless Intern program to keep building and keep growing. So,
yeah, you guys are amazing. You do such positive, incredible work at a time when so many people really need the support. So thanks for everything that you do.
Of course, and thank you and all of our advisory board members, and of course our founder Janine. You guys really set us up for success, so we appreciate that. But before we conclude, Sheila, I want to ask you, do you have any general, self-care tips that you think could help people during COVID or just in general?
One of my doctors said something that I just love to pass on to friends, and she said she thinks that 50% of mental illnesses could be avoided if people did 3 things, and I too believe in these. And number 1 is sleep. Keep it as a priority because it is for your brain to be able to function properly. You must have good sleep. To move your body daily, and it doesn't mean you have to be doing Ironmans. It just means gentle stretching or walking in nature or rhythmic dancing or whatever it is that actually feeds your soul. And then thirdly is having someone you really trust to tell your deepest thoughts to. This is not about, being the brightest person on Instagram or the most clever on Twitter. It's about really having friends or a partner in your life who you can say, I'm really hurting today. I'm confused. My cognitive ability is really bad. I don't want to do my taxes, really sharing the parts that are difficult. Because what a lot of data shows us, Trey, is that if people just have someone they trust to offload those emotions and those really, really difficult thoughts to, you can actually avoid having to get professional help.
Wow.
Now, it's not to say that there aren't going to be people who become so sick that they're going to need professional help, but the majority of otherwise healthy people can really be helped by saying, this is part of my daily practice to share deeply and honestly, and also to listen to other people without judgment.
Wow, that was beautiful. 3 tips from Sheila Hamilton. We definitely appreciate that. I'm writing those down. That was amazing.
Yeah, thanks. I do them every day. I really do, and it really does help. So.
Wow, this has just motivated me even more. I've seen some of your episodes. Just practicing and just hearing from Janine all about you, but I'm really gonna tune in and be your top fan. I really conversation.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy. I'm just so happy to know you. And Janine just attracts the best, most positive people. It's really the reason that after a lot of looking around at where I wanted to volunteer and give my time, Flawless was the place, because they bring a kind of energy and positivity and always the hope of recovery for people who are really suffering. And I absolutely think that's what we need for people who are dealing with mental health conditions.
And Sheila, and that's what makes you so flawless. So I thank you again. No, thank you. Really, thank you for joining us. And to our Flawless family, if you want more from Sheila, just make sure that you follow her on Twitter and Instagram at Sheila Hamilton. as well as her podcast, which is on Instagram at Beyond Well Podcast. As always, we will make sure that we link that for everybody. But yeah, Sheila, this was amazing. This is informative. I really appreciate you joining us today.
I hope we can stay in touch, Trey. I'm really excited to watch your career.
No, please do. We definitely will. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Take good care.